You've sat and watched Vivian's ultrasound. And we understand that that was Vivian. And that was life. You know, that's important, that's precious, because that's what separates us from animals. We actually care about lives other than our own survival. It's an amazing concept. But that's the political extension of the micro level of this. There are issues that we just need to reject. And so what does that mean for the pop culture? So that means if I'm watching a show and the elements in that show don't speak to life as important. It could be something as silly as making jokes about how, you know, having another kid is just a burden. And it's just this down thing that this lady is pregnant. So it's so depressing. We've all seen those shows, right? Mm-hmm. Like she finds out she's pregnant, and it's like, are you pregnant or do you have cancer? Like I can't, like what mood are you in? It's completely the same. But what is that? That's teaching us something. That's teaching us that that child is equal to cancer. What do you do to cancer? Get rid of it. By any means necessary. Chemicals in your body, not a problem. Get rid of cancer, right? That baby's not cancer, right? That baby's, so just that gives you an element of the micro level of that teaching. All right. Now we're going to start getting into practical application and happiness, I promise. No more cancer or abortion, maybe. So now we're going to talk about redeeming. And this is the most important aspect. Because you can accept and reject, and that's a little easier than it sounds. But if you're not willing to actually go out and redeem certain elements of your culture, then we lose. Because we're only rejecting and receiving that which is presented to us. We're not presenting that which should be either rejected or received. All right, so this is where the rubber meets the road. So to talk about the church cultural influence of this, Jeremiah, and then I'll follow up with Flip.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've already seen that there are certain cultural elements that should just be outright rejected. There are other ones that we can accept. Maybe those are morally neutral things that we can just, accept. But then there are other aspects of culture that maybe it's not perfect, but maybe it's still something that we can redeem. It's still something that we can bring into the church. It's not perfect, but we're going to work on it, and we're going to eventually get to the place where it can be perfected and it can be acceptable. Now, a perfect example of this is music. Now, music in itself is not inherently evil. It's not inherently righteous. There have been people in the past that have said rock and roll is evil. It's inherently evil.
Kills houseplants.
Well, and I don't believe that because, well, I mean, I like rock and roll, but but it really comes down to not just the music itself. What is the motivation behind the music? What are the qualities of the music, such as lyrics, such as in modern culture, what's the music video about? I mean, it can be a decent song. You hear it on the radio. Wow, that's got a good up tempo. It's got a good message. I think we can even apply that in our lives, kids. And then you watch the music video, and you're like, oh my goodness, no, that's bad. So it's not the music itself that is inherently evil, but many times music is something that we need to redeem. And a perfect example of this is most churches have at least some sort of music, up-tempo, some would even consider rock and roll in church. Because it's not the music that is the issue, it's the content. And if we redeem that, it can be used for the glory of God. The music itself is not the issue, but it's a matter of the heart, and it's a matter of applying that, proper application. So music can just, tear down. It can be destructive. It can just tear at the heart of God, but it can also bless God. And a perfect example of this is David was one of the greatest musicians mentioned in the Bible. Constantly, almost everything he did had to do with music and glorifying God through that medium. But we've also seen where it's destructive and it tears down. So the issue might not be perfect, but we can redeem it for the glory of God.
All right, from a political standpoint, before I get into the political standpoint, I think it's important to understand that redeeming something is not an excuse to reject it and just package it differently. Okay? You know, one thing I always talk about is that we don't need more Christian music. We need more musicians that are Christ-filled and are good musicians. We don't need more quote-unquote Christian movies, especially biblical movies done by Hollywood. Can I get an amen on that? There's like 50 million. But we need great Christians who know how to make movies. Right? And if we look at the history of the church, this is something that the history of the church, and I'm not Catholic, but Catholicism, most of the art, most of the creativity was coming out of what? The Catholic Church. Michelangelo's, and the Leonardo da Vinci's, they were within the church. They were getting licensed by the church and paid for by the church to do these great art things because it was going to the glory of God, right? We don't necessarily do that, right, anymore. We're not creating, nobody is, very rarely has anyone said, wow, the top guitarist in the world, he was a Christian, okay, right? But we couldn't, that's because we kind of put our Christian guitar players in a box over here. So we can't use it just as a tool to reject and, again, become separatists, okay? Same thing goes for politics. There are a lot, we don't need more quote-unquote conservatives, entertainment options. We need great conservatives creating entertainment options. Do you see the distinction? It's a small distinction, but it's a big difference. Because we don't need our own Hollywood. We need more conservatives in Hollywood, right? And that takes a lot more long-term thinking. That takes that your child, when they say, hey, Dad, I think I'm called to be a screenwriter, or I'm called to make films. Wonderful, all right. Building that up from the beginning. And not saying, well, you have, that's okay, but can't you do that on your own time? Like you can do a how-to on YouTube. No, you have to go through the film, okay? Supporting them in that vision. We'll get that a little later. But that's the distinction and the difference. That's why we're getting our butts kicked in the pop culture realm. Is because everything you watch, everything that comes, everything that is quote-unquote quality TV, a few exceptions, but everything you watch is quality TV, it can actually be good TV. I'm not even talking about the smut. I'm talking about legitimately good TV. It has liberal backtones and liberal messaging. Why is that? All the writers are liberal. The director is liberal. The showrunner is liberal. On down. And with few exceptions. And so that's how we're going to break through. Obviously, movies and entertainment is important in our culture. So instead of closing ourselves off, we have to redeem that. We have to push that. It also means we have to be willing to support those who are going out in that, even if we don't necessarily, it's not our cup of tea, okay? You're not a big action thriller person. I get that. It's fine. But if someone creates a great action thriller that has a good conservative theme to it and is good quality, support it. Okay? So that's a part of the redemption. All right. Going back to my original point. Redeeming the culture necessitates activism. You are never going to redeem the culture by sitting on your laurels and letting it come to you. Okay? Again, going back to that dynamic.